with these sessions, the two 15-minute sessions, the 2-minute break. So when we have that 2-minute break, you've got a number of choices on what to do. If your legs are starting to hurt and so forth, then you can stretch your legs to relax them. If you can sit comfortably for 30 minutes without problem, then in the 2-minute break you can simply let go of your object and just rest and without moving the body. Or if you feel like you can sustain the practice for a whole 30 minutes, then you don't need to take a break. You can just keep meditating. And then, of course, at the beginning of the second half, if I do any guiding, you can just ignore that and just continue your practice. So they're basically the 3 options you can have. Either have a break, stretch your legs if you need. If you don't, just have a break and just stay quietly in posture. Or if you can meditate for the whole 30 minutes quite well, then just keep meditating. Just a couple more points before we go back to the practice. So remember, in the preparation of the body, it's to prepare the body with relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. So remember, vigilance is keep the back straight and allow the entire body to become completely relaxed. And if you find it helpful, as we suggested in the last meditation, you can do this breathing exercise at the beginning of a meditation. So the 3 deep breaths can help to release tension in the body, but also can help to release any sort of agitation in the mind. So if you find that helpful, you can do that right at the beginning. If you don't, you just leave it out. And then, of course, once we've established a good posture, is really keep the body as still as possible to avoid any unnecessary movement. So, avoid this sort of constant moving. Of course, if pain builds up and that's just pulling your attention, then you'll need to adjust your posture. But other than that, if there's any little things in the body, just sort of let them be. And of course, the 2 main imbalances in this practice is dullness and distraction. So remember, when we find ourselves distracted, first thing to do is just relax, then release the distraction and very gently come back. And we saw there that often for dullness, one of the main reasons we fall into dullness is we've simply lost interest in the practice. So then we can refresh our interest, restore our attention, and then retain that flow of mindfulness. And we can do this little sort of balancing on each breath. Often we're sort of tending to sort of either go more just completely into distraction or completely into dullness. So what we can do then on every breath is, particularly on the out breath, we can emphasize the relaxation, and on the in breath we can emphasize the sharpening the focus. So relaxing on the out breath and sharpening the focus on the in breath. And that way we can sort of maintain the balance on every breath. And also, if you're meditating with the eyes open, what can also be helpful, which we introduced previously, is if you're getting agitated, distracted, just lower the gaze slightly, or if you're really becoming dull and drowsy, elevate the gaze. So that's adjustments we can make. And then, of course, as a beginner, probably the most common imbalance is just getting distracted. And if you're finding that you're getting distracted a lot, then in each one of the practices we did, there were short-term strategies that we could use to help us to get into the practice. So, of course, for the breath, one strategy was to count the breaths. And there are variations of counting, of course. The one we introduced a few days back was from counting on the in-breath, and counting 1 up to 10 and go back to 1. But you can count on the out-breath, you can keep counting, there are many variations. Or you can count 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, or you can do a couple of breaths and count that as 1. Or you can even do the noting, breathing in, breathing out, or simply in, out. So many variations, so you can use any one of those variations if you find it helpful. If you don't find it helpful, then just leave it out. What I would recommend is only to bring that in when you're heavily distracted and if you find it helpful. And once you stabilise a little bit more, then slowly let go of it again. Similarly with the mind, if we're observing thoughts and emotions, one strategy we brought in to help us to avoid getting distracted a lot was, again, labeling the mental event. And if we're doing that labeling to keep it very simple, otherwise it just becomes commentary on commentary on commentary. And another thing we brought in there is if that doesn't really work, to go back into the body, anchor yourself in the rhythm of the breath, have that as your main focus, and then just a little bit in the corner of your mind, notice your thoughts and emotions. And similarly with the resting in awareness practice, if you're getting caught up in appearances or you're just going completely blank, then it can be helpful to go back and anchor yourself in the rhythm of the breath again. Have that as your main focus, and then a little bit in the corner of your mind, just notice that stillness of awareness. So we can bring those strategies in the short term if we find ourselves heavily distracted. One more point and then we'll go back to the practice, and that is the basis of all of these practices, of course, is relaxation, a relaxed body and a relaxed mind. And so we need to be monitoring if there's tension building up. And if there's tension building up, then even if we are actually focused on the object well, but there's a lot of tension building up, then we need to really release that. And again, on each out-breath, release, release, release. And if you can't release it, then don't stay with your object. And then the two practices that are most likely to build up tension is focusing at the nostrils and observing the thoughts. Because we tend to be tensing because to notice sensations in the thoughts. So particularly in those two practices, just be mindful of any tension. And if tension builds up, even if you're focusing well here and noticing the thoughts well, but tension is building up and you can't release it, then go back from there, or the mind, go back into the body, go back into the rhythm of the breath and re-establish that basis in relaxation. And then when we're much more relaxed, then we can return to either the nostrils or observing the mind. Okay? So let's do that practice again. So again, 2 15-minute sessions with a 2-minute break, and maybe a little bit less guiding in this one. We begin as always by preparing the body. and preparing the mind, allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment, and simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. And then, having established a basis of a relaxed body and a relaxed mind, shift your attention to your chosen object and sustain it with mindfulness.